administration and children. In late February, the media reported that the American Civil Liberties Union had filed a lawsuit on behalf of a Congolese mother. According to the ACLU lawyer, Ms. L, they did not want her name to be given, so they referred to her as L, and her daughter fled the Democratic Republic of the Congo in grave danger. When they reached the United States on November 1st, 2017, they immediately asked for political asylum. It's a legal status that we have in our country. The United States Custom and Border Protection officials took them into custody together, mother and daughter. However, 4 days later, the officials handcuffed Mrs. L with a restraint around her waist and ankles and took her daughter away from her 7-year-old daughter. This is in early November. They locked Mrs. L up in a detention center near San Diego. They took her daughter to Chicago, and they put her in a jail for unaccompanied immigrant children. Customs and Border Protection officials gave Mrs. L and her daughter no explanation for the separation. A few days after the ACL lawsuit and the media coverage and the outrage that followed the lawsuit in February, the government abruptly released Mrs. L, and with the help of the ACLU, she and her 7-year-old daughter were reunited in Chicago in March. But because of all the news coverage, all the media coverage of this case, word spread that other families were also being separated. By mid-June, like millions of others, I was upset by the news media reports that Customs and Border Protection had taken thousands of children from their parents. On radio and television, I heard and watched children cry for their mothers as they were held in cages by our own government. Customs and Border Protection database categorized these human children as deleted family units. Deleted family units. They placed the children and their parents in separate detention facilities, often thousands of miles apart. In at least one detention facility, guards gave the children drugs to control their behavior. Now, we make sense of our own life by the stories that we carry around inside us about our experiences. So as I followed the news this summer, I remembered once when I was about 4 or 5 years old, my father, mother, and sister and I went to visit a desert botanical garden in Phoenix. Somehow, during the visit, I lost the rest of my family. I couldn't find it, and I remember being very afraid. After wandering around the cactus for a time, I finally made my way back to the family car in the parking lot on the belief that they would not drive away without me. Eventually they showed up, and I felt an enormous relief. I don't know how much time I was separated from my family, but it was probably only a few minutes. Nevertheless, over 60 years later, I still remember how afraid I felt. Now, perhaps you have a similar memory. My experience helped me imagine in a very small way the fear the children separated from their parents might have felt this summer. Separating the children from their parents at the border is not the United States that I love. It is not the America that I am proud to be a part of. I thought about my own relative, Hans Fritts, and his 7-year-old son, Ulrich Fritts, who arrived in Philadelphia from Germany on the ship Elizabeth on October 30th, 1738. As far as I know, father and son were not separated. They were probably indentured servants, but I don't know. Woolridge Fritts eventually made his way to Lexington, North Carolina, where he created a farm. And in his 50s, he joined with others to fight against the British in the War for Independence. And he died when colonists who were loyal to the British Crown killed him at his farm in 1781. We make sense of the world by the stories we tell ourselves. So this summer, as I watched the news, I thought of the story of Hans and Woolridge Fritz's arrival in Philadelphia in 1738. A father and a 7-year-old child. So on June 20th, I wrote a letter to Florida Senator Marco Rubio, and I said the obvious, that this separation of children from their parents contradicts both the values of religion and the values of the United States of America. That morning, I went to the Russell Senate office building on Capitol Hill. I went to Senator Rubio's office and I hand-delivered my letter to one of his staff persons. The staffer I talked to said there were 14 summer interns in the next room answering phones, and that people were calling. Now, sometimes moral outrage from hundreds of thousands of Americans does work. So later that same day, the president issued an executive order to end the family separation policy. However, the president offered no plan to reunite the thousands of children who had already been separated from their parents. Now, back in March, the ACLU had filed a motion expanding its original lawsuit on behalf of one person in detention in San Diego into a nationwide class action suit on behalf of the hundreds of other unnamed families who had been separated. At that point, they didn't realize it was thousands. The American Civil Liberties Union lawyer argued that the separation of children from their families is first a violation of the Constitution's Due Process Clause. Secondly, a violation of the federal law protecting asylum seekers. And third, a violation of the government's own directive to keep families intact. The case was assigned to a judge nominated to the federal bench in 2003 by President George W. Bush, a judge confirmed unanimously by the Senate in 2003. His name was Dana Makoto Sabraw. Sabraw said in a 2003 newspaper interview when he became a judge, federal judge. He said, "We have such a wonderful system of justice. And I think the judge's role is so important. If we can be kind and courteous and fair in the application of the law, no matter where it leads, we are performing a great service to society." Sabraw's father was a school teacher who devoted his life to teaching children with special needs. Sabraw says his father was his principal role model for being a good, ethical person. His father was in the army stationed in Japan during the Korean War, where he met Sabraw's mother in 1954. The couple married in 1955 and moved to the United States in 1956. But they encountered trouble finding housing because of the prejudice against the Japanese. Sabraw said, "In light of that experience, I was raised with a great awareness of prejudice. There were times when I was growing up that I felt different and hurtful things occurred because my mother was Japanese, because of my race." Sabraw said that looking back, he sees these experiences as opportunities for him to grow as a person. He graduated from the School of Law at the University of the Pacific in Stockton California in 1985. Sabra said his family background feeds directly into who I am as a judge. Following his parents' example from their life at home, Sabra said he has never raised his voice in his courtroom or his chambers. I think an effective courtroom is one where there is a sense of serenity, he said. Sabra is a devoted family man. He coached Little League Baseball. He served as the general manager of his son's baseball team, and he supported his twin daughter's interest in soccer. A friend said, he just felt so deeply as a matter of conviction that he should be a judge. He also had a deep belief in the role of public service, and that service to the public was a good and noble thing. He truly deserves a sense of personal fulfillment. He derives a sense of personal fulfillment out of being an instrument through which justice is administered. Well, I first heard about this federal judge on June 26, when I read a news bulletin on the internet. In San Diego, he issued a 24-page decision. He wrote in part, and I want to read extensively from his decision. He wrote, 11 weeks ago, plaintiffs leveled the serious accusation that our government was engaged in a widespread practice of separating migrant families and placing minor children who were separated from their parents in government facilities for unaccompanied minors. According to plaintiffs, the ACLU, the practice was applied indiscriminately and separated even those families with small children and infants, many of whom were seeking asylum. The practice of separating these families was implemented without any effective system or procedure for what? Tracking the children after they were separated from their parents. 2, enabling communication between the parents and their children after separation. And 3, reuniting the parents and children. This is a startling reality, wrote the judge. The government readily keeps track of personal property of detainees in criminal and immigrant proceedings. Money, important documents, and automobiles, to name a few, are routinely cataloged. They are stored, they are tracked, and they are produced upon a detainee's release at all levels, state, federal, citizen, and alien. Yet the government has no system in place to keep track of, to provide effective communication with, and to promptly produce alien children. The unfortunate reality is that under the present system, immigrant children are not accounted for with the same efficiency and accuracy as property. In effect, these parents have been left in a vacuum, without knowledge of the well-being and location of their children, to say nothing of the immigration procedures in which those minor children find themselves. Some parents have already been deported without their children, who remain in government facilities in the United States. A practice of this sort, wrote the judge, implicated in this way, is likely to be so outrageous that it may fairly be said to shock the contemporary conscience. And it's so brutal and offensive that it does not comport with traditional ideas of fair play and decency. Separating children from parents is highly destabilizing, a traumatic experience that has long-term consequences on children's well-being, safety, and development. We are a country of laws and compassion. We are a country of laws and compassion, said the judge. He ordered the government to reunite children under the age of 5 with their parents within 14 days. and to reunite all the children within 30 days. As I read those words back in June in the news, some of my faith in the United States was restored. By the first deadline, July 10th, the government had reunited 58 out of 103 children who were under the age of 5. At the second deadline, July 23rd, the administration told the court that it had reunited or appropriately discharged 1,187 of the 2,551 children ages 5 and older who were forcibly separated from their parents. They said that in estimated 463 cases, U.S. Customs and Border Protection had deported parents without their children and could not now find their parents. Now, because of poor record keeping, the officials explained that they were not entirely sure that that number of 463 was actually correct. Judge Sabraw called these revelations deeply troubling. After the hearing, the judge summarized the situation. He said, there were 3 agencies, and each was like its own stovepipe. Each had its own boss, and they did not communicate. What was lost in the process was the family. The parents did not know where their children were. The children did not know where their parents were. And the government did not know either. August 2nd, the Justice Department suggested that the American Civil Liberties Union should use its network of law firms, non-governmental organizations, and volunteers to track down the parents that the government had separated from the children and deported. Judge Sabraw was not happy with the government's effort to shift responsibility to the ACLU. He said, this is the result of the government's separation and their inability and failure to track and reunite. And the reality is that for every parent who is not located, there will be a permanently orphaned child. And that is 100% the responsibility of the administration. Now, 2 weeks ago on Saturday, a New York Times reporter attended a conservative political gathering here in Sarasota and interviewed some of the people attending. Asked about the most important issue facing Florida this year, a Sarasota activist at the gathering, a woman working one of the booths, quickly said, the illegals. She added, it's not immigration, it's an invasion. Actually, illegal immigration across the southern border is now at historic lows. According to the Border Patrol data, about 300,000 immigrants were caught crossing the border in 2017. And that is down from a high of 1.6 million in the year 2000. And that just taxed those who were coming across from the southern border. More Mexicans are returning to their native country than are coming to the United States. And the immigrants who are still here are working mostly at what are called the 3D jobs. 3D. Jobs that are dirty, dangerous, or demeaning. Jobs that others do not want to do. And without them, many farms, hospitals, nursing homes, hotels, and restaurants would not be able to function. And as for the claim that illegal aliens are more likely to commit crimes, the arrest rate for illegal immigrants is 40% below that of native-born American citizens. The last rational attempt to regulate immigration into the United States was proposed by 4 Democrats and 4 Republicans, including Senator Rubio, a bill called the Border Security, Economic Opportunity, and Immigration Modernization Act of 2003. In June of 2013, this bill passed the Senate with a strong majority, 68 to 32, both Republicans and Democrats supporting it. However, the Speaker of the House of Representatives refused to bring the bill up for a vote in the House, so it never became law. Currently, our national government is run by wealthy people who use the fear of poor, dark-skinned immigrants as a way of maintaining their political power. I find this deeply troubling. Still, there are many caring people in our country. Many of us, I'm sure almost all of us in our country, most of us, when we see a frightened child who has been separated from her family, from his family, we will stop whatever we are doing. If we see a child crying in a park or in a grocery store or on the street, we'll stop what we're doing. We'll stop where we're going. And we will do our best to reunite that child with her parents. Because most of us realize how critically important it is. There are many, many good people in our country. People like Judge Dana Makoto Sabraw. He said, June 26th, we are a country of laws, a country of compassion. He said, separating children from parents is outrageous. It's shocking, it's brutal, it's offensive. And he ordered the government to reunite these families. Dana Makoto Sabraw's middle name was given to him by his Japanese mother. Makoto is the Japanese word for truth. So this morning, I give you hope. I give you the hope that there are people like him who have the courage to speak the truth to power and to take action. This summer, this man saved America's soul. Let's sing our closing hymn.